Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, where we sit down with the people who give shape, texture, and voice to life on the North Fork of Long Island. Some are rooted here by generations, others arrived by chance or choice, but all carry with them a piece of the story. We talk about what's changing, what's worth holding on to, and the currents of history, both quiet and loud, that run through this place. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 147, we sit down with John Quinlan, whose life and work reflects the spirit of service, resilience, and community. John grew up in New York, first dreaming of becoming a teacher, and that calling led him to the Peace Corps in Nigeria. Before returning home to continue teaching in Brentwood, his journey would eventually take him into activism, helping to shake the gay rights movement and working with the gay men's health crisis during some of the most challenging years of the AIDS epidemic. Later, John made his way to Greenport, where his passion for community, conservation, and beauty took root. He played a role in bringing the AIDS Memorial Quilt to Washington, D.C., ensuring stories of love and loss were remembered. And as chair of the Greenport Tree Committee, he's been instrumental in initiatives that have shaped the village's landscape, from tree plantings to the beloved Cherry Blossom Festival. So I hope you enjoy episode 147 with John Quinlan. This episode was recorded June 12th, 2025. Thank you so much for coming on the Floyd Memorial Library podcast today. It's really great to have you on today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm eager to tell you my story.
Thank you. And usually in the beginning, we like to start off, if you can give us a little background about yourself, even where you grew up and a little bit through your career and then making your way out here.
Okay. I grew up in New Rochelle, New York, in Westchester County, and went all through Catholic school. And when it came time for college, they were trying to make us go to Iona College, which continued Irish Catholic brothers as teachers, and I just couldn't do that. I had had plenty of religious instruction. I had a very religious family. There were 2 nuns, 3 priests, etc. So we gave enough of our family, I thought. Anyhow, I did go to Hunter College, and I had a scholarship to go there so I could go for no cost, which is the only way I could go because we were not well off, and I had to work. Anyway, Hunter College, wonderful, Bronx. It was a city experience, which I had not had growing up in New Rochelle. It was just very close by, but it was a world away. So I decided I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a social studies teacher, and that's how I geared my life. I was with my girlfriend at the time and my wife. We both graduated from Hunter at that same time in 1966, and we had to be teachers. I mean, we agreed to be teachers. We wanted to be teachers. But first, we had been inspired to join the Peace Corps. And the Peace Corps was, of course, an idea of John Kennedy, President Kennedy. And I thought of it like the minute he announced it and talked about it. And I said, I want to do that. So I was very geared towards other cultures. I studied a lot of cultural anthropology and how people live and why they do it that way and not the other way. And Marianne was my wife. She was a biology major. So we were a team, and we were going to be these teachers. But first, what about this Peace Corps? So we decided we did want to join. We went to train in UCLA, to go to Nigeria in West Africa. And people thought we were either brave or crazy or what got into us. People didn't even know where Nigeria was. A lot of people didn't know anyway. But we certainly found out about it. We learned about it in UCLA. We had great instructions. We had language. We had to speak Hausa. We had 3 months, very intensive language arts training. And then it was time to go to Nigeria. And it could not have been a worse time, actually, because trouble had been brewing in that country. As a result of British colonial programs, tribes were separated, tribes were put together in ways they did not choose to live. Anyhow, there were all kinds of rumors before we went, and we knew the history well enough to think this is a pot that's going to boil over, and we just hope for the best. We loved the people, but what they were going through was horrible, and there were a series of mass killings and tribal warfare, and we cut short our stay. We said we just can't be here. And we were working with a group, one of the ethnic groups that was kind of responsible for a lot of the trouble. So we just felt like we better get home. So it was the end of August. We said, if we're going, we should go now. And we, of course, we were allowed to leave. They were concerned for our welfare. The week after we left, the airport was bombed. It was an awful time, and you had to be debriefed. We had to go to Washington en route home, and we saw that they had Nigeria and Biafra listed as two separate countries, which was, they could have really ruptured relations with Nigeria with that one, because Biafra was a section of Nigeria that was breaking away. And people my age will remember that there were plight of children, starving children in Biafra, and kids with swollen bellies, kwashiorkor. They were starved out, a lot like there's ethnic cleansing and starving out these days. And that has not gone away. But we had to kind of take care of ourselves, get home. And we went to Washington, explained our situation, and we were treated very well and accommodated too. We had all medical coverage to see what we had. I had malaria. I mean, it was quite a lot going on. But we were determined to be home in familiar territory, and we went back to live at my parents' house in New Rochelle. And someone said, "Are you looking to teach?" We said, "Yes." And they said, "Oh, there's this school district on Long Island that's building a new building each year. Now they have 23 schools into what used to be potato field living." And it was near Brentwood. It was Brentwood School District near Bayshore. My experience with Long Island was going to Jones Beach after the senior prom in high school, sleeping on the beach that night. I didn't know Long Island at all. So Marianne and I went for the interview. It was a Friday. We got the jobs. Monday was Labor Day of that week. And we showed up in our classrooms, and we had experience that prepared us for that. Having taught in Nigeria, we taught students and we taught adults in Nigeria, and we only stayed, 18 months or so in Nigeria. But then Brentwood, and people said, "Oh God, Brentwood," and we're saying, "What are you talking about?" It had a reputation of being too expanded too quickly. Staffing was all new teachers. And the first year that the junior high school was open, they had a massive turnover, you might say. And the kids kind of ruled the school, like they say in Greece. Anyway, that was Brentwood, New York. We taught there, and taught there.
As a social studies?
I was social studies. They each had exactly the jobs we would have applied for.
Okay.
And Marianne taught the biology. She taught the Regents biology. And she taught 7th grade science. I taught 9th grade and 7th grade social studies. And it was just perfect because 9th grade was non-Western cultures.
Mm-hmm.
So it was about Asia and Africa, which is my field. So it was a very good fit. We were all new teachers, which had its difficulties because we weren't very seasoned, but we were learning to be really good teachers, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And we put up with some problems. There was a big issue with witchcraft at the time. I mean, it sounds like I'm talking about the Salem witch trials or something. But there was a family, a coven, right down the street from our school. And it was quite something to see how the community responded and how also we tried to work those kids in, the kids from that family. I mean, it's a lot.
What year was that?
So we're talking 68, 1968, 69, way before you were born. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Wow.
something. So we have kids, and they're now 50s, in their 50s. So anyway, we went to work. Where were we going to live? We had no place to live.
Mm-hmm.
So we rented this garden apartment in Bayshore. And at the time, these garden apartments were springing up, I think, not built to anybody's code or not to any specificity of quality. Anyway, it was not a good place to live. And eventually we said we have to live closer to the city. We were going to the city every weekend. And so we got an apartment in Nassau County. And then eventually we said, let's not live this way because we were on the road more than we were in the classroom. Anyway, so some time passed. We had our good times, actually, teaching in Brentwood, our own kids. Went to the Sachem School District and then Bayport. Eventually, we realized that though we cared a lot about each other and we loved each other, we were really two gay people living in this marriage. And it's why it worked for a long time, but it wasn't as who we truly were in our core. And with no hard feelings, we supported each other, going to different meetings, and there were a lot of activity, a lot of social things happening. And every school, I mean, you could not be gay and work in a school district. That wasn't going to be done. But there were gay liberation was happening. Stonewall happened. I had been at Stonewall to go to the bar, once or twice in the old days, and you had no idea that was going to spiral into a gay rights situation. Anyhow, we left the marriage, but we stayed teaching in Brentwood. We of course, raised the kids together. We shared responsibilities for things. It was very civilized and very, I think, the best we could do with the situation. And not to say that we felt shorted out on something. So Marianne got someone right away, and I took some time and met some people to be with. But there was so much going on that it was an exciting time. I went to a men's support group at Stony Brook that was revelatory, and people were free finally to talk about who they were and what they could be and how they were treated, how they were raised. And Marianne was in a women's group. It was a really strong time, letting everyone be, let people be heard. And if you were different, they would make an accommodation. And you would try to, of course, be respectful, but not allow yourself to be put down anymore than you were. So that's that. Eventually, I decided I needed to live in the city and commute out to Brentwood. So I did that for a few years. And then it was time to just live in the city and teach in the city. So I got a job teaching in an independent school. And it was very, very different from Brentwood. Brentwood, I just loved the kids there. Mostly I did. People would say, "Oh, you teach in Brentwood?" And I'd say, "Don't give me that."
They get a bad reputation.
It's true. And so you say, my experience is what I'm going to tell you about. And that was okay. You have difficult kids, you have difficult teachers, but you can't rule out the whole district for forevermore because of these, and this reputation just didn't go away. It was the year after I left that school district, a disgruntled former student came in. He had been a substitute teacher in the building. He came in with a rifle. It was one of the first school shootings. And it was in Brentwood. And I wasn't there anymore. I was teaching in the city. But Marianne was still in that building. My kids were safely home and didn't go to that school district, but there was a shooting, and he killed himself eventually. It was a student that I had in my class, and it was harrowing. It was horrible, and the poor kid was so lost. Anyway, it's we had a memorial service, and meanwhile, what was happening globally was Vietnam was just a horror, and people trying to move that or shut it down or rethink it or something were just considered traitors, and anti-war kind of meant hippies and drugs and stuff, and it didn't necessarily mean that at all. But eventually the anti-war movement began to strengthen, and anyhow, they eventually, President Nixon he used all different tactics to ensure his longevity in office, but then there was Watergate, so thank goodness for Watergate. Is that my editorial comment. But so taught in the city, and during the time of living out further on Long Island, I had been called to jury duty a couple times, and that was in Riverhead. So I'd go to Riverhead, do the jury duty, and then in the summer I'd say, okay, I would do another one if they had the need. I would do that, and then in the break time or the lunchtime, I'd come out to Greenport from Riverhead, and I'd say, wow, this little town is so cute, and it's just you can see it's a little worn down at the edges, but it would be a wonderful place to live. It seemed like it would be a good place to live.
Around what year was that? Was that in the 80s?
That's in the 70s.
70s.
And in the 70s, yeah. And
they said it was kind of more, it could be a little rough.
Yes. There were, many store windows were empty.
Mm-hmm.
A store window might get broken and maybe not get fixed for a while. It was, but then the 80s, things were changing. There was a point where there was a lot of arguments about who came here first, who deserves to have this beautiful town. And it seemed to me like people were eventually coming together and realizing this is too nice a place to let it deteriorate. And if it's going to take some new people to a limit to fix it up, the old house on 2nd Street or make an apartment out of her garage or something. I mean, people did accommodate the needs that they had.
Mm-hmm.
The stores were very basic. There were 2 hardware stores, 3 at one point. Just the arcade had everything. And you didn't have to really leave Greenport to, but then the Tanger outlets and these other things came up. And that changed things a bit. People said, "Oh, can't find anything in Greenport anymore. The arcade is closed." And the arcade, it was old-fashioned, 5 and 10, and you could find curtains and dish mops, all kind of stuff. And it's kind of a shame that the building is there and just falling into disrepair. So I remember there was a bank that I don't know where it moved to. Anyway, things have come and gone and moved. Mm-hmm. The idea that you could go to any medical provider, that was fairly recent, maybe the last 20 years. And to have Stony Brook take over our hospital and be part of that system was, I think, really a good thing. It gave us access to really world-class doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And there they are, right in Greenport. It's a branch of their work in its planned living.
Oh, Peconic Landing.
Peconic Landing, yes. I mean, they talked about that for years and years. They talked about vineyards. They talked many things that were discussed and delayed or else promoted. There were kind of real estate wars and who wanted to do what and who would be allowed, who would not be allowed. The politics got kind of dicey. But we have arrived here at really, I think, a good place. And could we use more housing, more affordable housing? Yes, yeah, we sure could. Because we don't support the population here as much as maybe we could.
Yes. But I just wanted to go back a bit.
Sure, whatever you like.
I was curious even because you said, because you spent time in New York City through the 60s and...
The 80s.
The 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious even what you thought of New York City at that time.
Okay, I decided to live in the city and not do this. I was living in the city and commuting to Brentwood every day. And people said, "How did you do that?" Well, you can get used to anything. Mm-hmm. Come to find out. You can be resilient. You know you must get up at 4:30 in the morning. You must get on the road before 5:45. You can be in Brentwood. If you do it, the traffic was nothing like it is now.
Yeah. So
I could be out there and then going home. If I would get back in front of my building in the city in Manhattan, if I got there by 4:00, that school was letting out and the teachers were leaving and somebody would say, "Have my space." So that was an arrangement. And people, you make your arrangements, you pick up, where the coffee is hot and good and ready on your way to get on the road to go to Brentwood to teach. And then after a while I said, well, I don't want to commute anymore. That was enough of that. So I worked in an independent school. It was called New Lincoln. It was based on the idea of John Dewey, and it was an open classroom. It was very experimental. It was very, we all thought we were so hip in doing this. And I didn't like the kids very much. They were all very wealthy, and they were all totally different from the kids in Greenport. And they treated me like a servant, was how I picked up that attitude. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, well, they didn't choose to be like this. This is their upbringing. This is how their parents are. This is how the grandparents might have been. Mm-hmm. And I learned to really care more about them because, all right, they're hurting my feelings, but there are reasons, and I'm going to work with them and try to see. And so my understanding broadened, really, and I was like, I gave you more attention if you were a lower middle class kid from Brentwood than Upper East Side kid from Dalton or something. But it increased. I think it made me a more effective teacher, and I could suit my lessons and my teaching and my technique to the kids I was teaching. I did adult education too, and that was something we did in Nigeria. We taught teachers. That was very rewarding because you could see a multiplier in the things that we had taught. And then, they're repeating it and training other people. So what was happening in the 80s in the city, I arrived there just in time for AIDS epidemic. And being a gay man in the city in 1980, 81, 82, really was being in the midst of our pandemic. And I decided I'm a teacher. I can do something. I can do prevention work. I can teach people stuff to avoid infection or help dispel some of the fear. People who they'd move away from you on the bus if they thought you were gay. Not sick gay, but just gay. Because that meant sick to them in their way of thinking. And I remember the culture was very rough on us. Eddie Murphy making jokes about gay people sitting next to him, it was a cruel time, really cruel, but it was also a time of great charity and caring and coming out to people and people realizing, they didn't really know you. My brother was amazed that Marianne and I turned out to be gay. He just didn't know that. And I thought, well, there goes that relationship. But no, not at all. In fact, he became a volunteer at God's Love We Deliver, bringing meals to people who were homebound and in illness from AIDS. And his kids got involved with working with my kids and doing quilt projects and all this stuff that that was our avenue to help support people who had lost people. And I know that I'm a good teacher. I know I can get to a point and I can be, somehow, mostly I can be empathic. So I know that there were people suffering and people that were not even allowed to talk about the loss of their son. They had to say, he had pneumonia, or I don't know how he died. There was such fear. And so I did what I could in the city. I trained at Gay Men's Health Crisis. And they said, what kind of skill do you bring here? I said, well, I'm a teacher. I can educate. And they said, great. You can do, first school yourself on transmission and the stuff about the illness and the epidemic. And then we'll run classes then. And that's what I did. Then after a while, I said, well, this city living is not so great in the 80s because it was really a time of fear. Really, also the bottom had fallen out of the New York City economy. They were closing libraries and they were closing anything government service provided, and there was homelessness was getting to be quite a new problem. I thought it had been terrible, of course, in the Depression, but in the relatively
it was kind of rising again from the 70s onward.
That's right. That's right. And so in my building, there were people sleeping in the hallways. I mean,
where were you living?
I was on the Upper East Side, 76th, between 1st and 2nd. And it was just a regular neighborhood. It was just tenement buildings and stuff. And the beginning of affluence, or the high and low of those two, the contrast of my building, it was okay. It was livable. The door locked when people would lock it behind them. And then these luxury condos, and it was quite a contrast. And I think I still have my Peace Corps kind of mentality that if it's hard scrabble and down deep and true to the person's culture and stuff, that I like that. And if it's too fancy, I can't do it. I don't know. I could do it, I guess. But so anyway, moved out here, and I took the Master Gardener's class in Riverhead at Cornell Cooperative Extension. A friend of mine was in that class, or he said he was going to sign up, and he did. And I took it with him, and it was great. It was 20 weeks, one day each week, learning all about gardens and grass and trees and everything. It was great, wonderful. And they had a series of lectures each week. So in that class, I met someone named Jane Williams. And Jane and I became friends right away. And she and her husband lived in Greenport. And we shared garden stuff and all. So, and meanwhile, I was doing these education things. So she said, I'm on the PTA in Brentwood. Her kids were in the school here. And we're looking for someone to talk about AIDS, HIV and AIDS and all that. Would I do it? And I said, of course. So I did a PTA meeting. Sometimes the PTA meetings were good, and people wanted to know stuff, but other times they were argumentative. They thought, how dare you come in there and talk to my kids about this? But your kids have to know about it. You really, and Cornell developed this whole program of talking with your kids about HIV, AIDS. So that's what I did. And I talked to school groups all over, mostly Suffolk County. And it was considered quite successful. It was the most successful one in the state. And I got a reputation. And people living with AIDS offered to come and talk. And if I could pick them up and do that. And that's what happened here in Greenport. Jane Williams organized a PTA meeting, and they had me come, and they had my friend Doug Campbell come. And Doug was from the South Fork, and he was a landscaper. The guy, I'm not going to remember his name, but who's in charge or produced Lorne Michaels from Saturday Night Live. Doug did his garden. That was kind of his claim to fame. He came and he spoke from the heart, of course. He was dying. He was my friend. And to hear it from the point of view of someone who has been discriminated or people move away from you or something was very, very strong, very powerful. So I gave 13 lesson seminars. I mean, it developed into quite an extensive program. And I knew that I had heard about this quilt that people were contributing to. And if you had lost someone, a family member or a work colleague or a neighbor, and you wanted to memorialize that person, you could work on a quilt that would then be sewn into the rest of the quilts that were really covering acreage. So I knew of women, mostly women that were doing that. And we went to different churches on different weekends, and they would bring out sewing machines we brought out the first time at Cornell Cooperative Extension. And I got a job there doing this education. It was the most ideal job for me at that time. I felt like I was doing something in the epidemic. I was fighting, and yet I was helping the mothers. So anyway, that's at Cornell. One person said, "Wouldn't it be something if we could do a memorial garden to remember the people that we've lost? We've lost a lot of people." And I talked to Cornell about it, and they said, "Well, we have this county farm in Yaphank, and that would be great. It would be 3 acres. You could make a garden there, and people could come and remember their loved ones or memorialize them." So I said, "Oh, great!" And being out here where all the growers are, I knew them, and they said, "Oh, I'll do the sod farm. I mean, I'm from Delia sod farm, whatever you need." Jim Warner's, people were just bending over to contribute, to plan, to do it. And Doug Campbell, the landscaper who did Lauren Michaels, he made a plan, and it became kind of something. We all had this goal that we'd make this thing happen. And then there was opposition, and the board of Cornell said, "What is that? Did they die for the state? Did they die for the county?" And it was so preposterous that they would say something like that. But they said, "Where's the garden for people who died of cancer?" And I said, "There could be one. There should be one, if that's the feeling, if that's what the families want to do." I said, "Is there any harm in making a beautiful garden somewhere?" So they said, "No, you can't do it. Absolutely not. Sorry, Delia sod farm. We're not going to do it. Not going to do it." It was crushing. And at this point, I had developed this whole volunteer group, and we were like 100 people, and they were my team. I'd say, they need somebody at Sag Harbor for Tuesday night. Okay, you take that. Often we would send a person living with AIDS, and maybe the mother of somebody, and another teacher or something. Sometimes we'd make teams up. Anyway, the teams were all being told, "Sorry, no garden for you." And so that site is vacant still. This is many years ago. But what we did, I'd go to a school group, like I went to Shelter Island, and they said, "Yes, we lost a teacher to AIDS. We lost a cousin of this person," and so on. We've had some loss. And getting people to say they've had loss and acknowledge it is what we got to be really good at. And people knew, his sister-in-law is really crushed. All right, she can come to the quilt workshop in Cutchogue Library next Tuesday. It was very, very, I just thought it was really wonderful.
Yeah.
So there's not a garden. Sometimes there's a garden in South Brookhaven and Patchogue, and East Islip gave us a whole side yard at St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church. And growers and people, workers, would say, "Oh, I have this azalea bush that I got for Christmas. I planted it in this garden." Things. It was just wonderful. It was a wonderful time. It was a horrible time, in a way. Anyway, the quilt pieces that we did, I mean, I could show you some different pictures of it. Of course, they were all sewn into sections that were 12 foot by 12 foot. And those were opened and folded and presented and viewed. You could walk around them. People would read about this one and that one. And it was really a vehicle of healing for a lot of people. And this same friend, Doug Campbell, went to a quilt workshop. He himself was not well, and you could tell he was not well. And yet he sat with this woman, Dorothy. Dorothy Demansky was her name, and she had lost her son. and he helped her plan a quilt. And it was a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
So we organized the quilt gatherings and showings in Washington, D.C. 3 times.
Wow.
And everybody has seen the pictures of aerial photographs looking down at the quilt.
Mm-hmm.
And there were different experiences from it. George Bush Sr. flew out over it without coming to the quilt. And people let you know their disdain, and they were not going to be paying attention to those queers or something. But that was, okay, we're not going to reach them, but look what we can do. And we bring those quilt pieces into school, and the kids were fascinated. So the program, my AIDS education program, was very successful, and I had to keep pushing it to be funded. It was state funded, and they did 2 years, and they renewed it for another year. But it was always touch and go, like, could I do this anymore? And so...
Was that through into the 90s and 2000s?
Yeah. We're talking the quilt shows, the big quilt shows were 92, 94, and 96 in Washington, D.C. So, they got to be more sympathetic, people in Washington, with Bill Clinton. They went to see the quilt. Mm-hmm. He and his wife went to see, they walked along and saw there was a Ryan White quilt made for a kid that died from AIDS, from a transfusion. Anyway, there was more sympathy was growing. And each time the quilt was shown, it was a huge, huge undertaking. And there were trainings, how to open it a certain way. And it was very Japanese in a way, and very structural. So the program in Suffolk County was getting to be well known. And my numbers were good and all that, but what I cared about was the volunteer network that we created. Anyway, I was invited to go on this people-to-people organization. They wanted to send me to China to spread the word about HIV and how to avoid it, how to prevent it, how to start thinking about it, because they had had no experience yet, or so they said. So it was the year after the Tiananmen Square massacre in '89 that I was selected to go on this group. So there were 75 of us from all over the country, and we each had different expertise. Somebody was a pastor at a church, and he ran the soup kitchen and the quilt workshops, and someone else was a doctor with a breakthrough idea about the virus. It was just fantastic. We were all, in one way or another, in the same boat. People who had lost their partners, people who had lost their husbands. So I decided to take some of those quilts, a couple of them, and each piece is 3 feet by 6 feet, which is the size of a cemetery plot. And on that, you are to put the person's name, some factual stuff, the year of birth, year of death, a picture of their house, a picture of their children. And so I brought 3 or 4 of them, and I brought the biographies, and I had them here in Greenport. I had them translated into Chinese, so that I could hold something up, and a Chinese reader would explain what was, and they were just so moved, and have a visual to go with the story to tell what our situation was like. Mm-hmm. So I talked to the Shanghai Medical Association. So here's our group of Americans, and I showed the quilt, different pieces of the quilt. And they called me at my hotel room and asked if I would meet with them the next day. And it was the Shanghai Medical Association, which was quite like top level people, and they were very moved by the presentation. And I had said that I could not even start making the quilt for my partner, who was Doug Campbell. And it was too daunting. It had to be the most beautiful one, the most perfect one. It had to be outstanding. And so I couldn't make one. And I said that in this Shanghai meeting. So they said, we would like to make the quilt for your partner who died. Can you tell us about his life? Oh my God. So, I said he was a landscaper, and they put trees on it, and they asked me if I could they have time to work on it. I said, oh, yes, it's a wonderful gesture. Thank you so much. And I really kind of half didn't expect to ever see it. It was nice for the moment, but you get busy, you don't do it. And so they did send it. And it was a couple months later, and it was beautiful. It was kind of a batik printed fabric, and with a tree and a man, and his name written in Chinese characters. Mm-hmm. So I have pictures of that. I can show you.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so go a little bit beyond that is I kept my work and my volunteer stuff. I was 24 hours. I was like the AIDS resource person. I could do this and I could help people. I knew they could get their landlord to help with the rent that month in Amityville. And, you just had to be a resource person. Mm-hmm. And I got good at that. And my volunteers were the most wonderful, really great people. So then, okay, the job at Cornell is ending. The funding I couldn't get continued. Mm-hmm. But I did get some grants, foundation grants and stuff. Here's another, I can do 2 more months now because I got this grant and so on. But it was ending. The bottom was falling out. So I know my teaching background let me apply for certain things. So this was during Columbine, and they were figuring out programs for teachers, violence prevention, and how to ease the family pain, and a lot of things. So BOCES applied for that, and I wrote the grant to get that, and I got it. So I worked in Riverhead Middle School and prevention programs and team building and club building and teacher education. So each grant was 3 years. So I kept doing that. And that was good work and rewarding. But the teachers really at that point were feeling like we are overburdened. We don't want another training. We don't. So I could use my understanding of being a teacher and a classroom teacher, and I had all the empathy in the world. So I kept working as long as I could, and then that was ending. So it was probably 2000 for September 11th. I was working Riverhead Middle School, and you
were working that day.
Yeah, working that day, and we just were hearing reports, and Riverhead was close enough to have people working in the city and downtown. So we were getting the kids ready to send them home, being sure that there was somebody home for them, and so on and so forth. So, of course, the horror of that, and I was kind of in a good place to help with that. And we did counseling, and the kids were just, and everybody was traumatized. It was a horrible, horrible thing. And I feel like each time I was in a place that's what it called to be. So that was the 3 years were winding down on that. I got it renewed for another year or two or something. But finally, okay, this is it. It's 40 years of education, closing the door now.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what to do with myself. So I got a call from the mayor here in Greenport, David Nice, and he knew we had a tree committee for years, and it kind of fell apart in 93 or something. And I noticed that the trees were looking a little shabby and for years. And we had no tree committee for several years. But David Nice said, would I be interested in working with Lillian White? And she had been on the previous tree committee. And I said, well, I don't know if she's going to accept me. I don't know. Going to her hardware store for years, it took 5 years for her to smile at me. So, because she was very protective. This is Greenport. Who are these city people? Who are these people coming in?
Yeah.
So I had to really kind of gain her trust and let her know that I cared deeply about
the
Greenport.
Community, yeah.
So we put it together, and we had started up the tree committee. So that was in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
So then, that's been very busy. The tree committee's been very busy. The village allows a certain amount of money, and our budget allows us to buy trees and to do some work. And the real reason for the tree committee, the main reason, which I think is beautification, but no, it's really safety, because these old dead trees fall down on your house or on your car or in the middle of your walkway. So it's a combination. It's both of those things. It's safety and beauty, and I'm proud to be there. So I was the chair from 2007 till about 2017.
Okay.
And in the presentation, the people that are on the committee, Jane Williams, from way earlier in my time in Greenport, and she's great. I love her a lot. And also Polly Dixon is a landscaper. She's on the committee. Carol Edwards, who's like Miss Community Action. She's on the Audubon group, but she's great. And Weiscott. Jack Weiscott has a nursery, ornamental planting. So that's our group. Eileen Capel has just joined up. That's our group. So it's been a wonderful experience to do that and to feel like I've made some improvements and helped a community that I've really come to love. I have, going back to that experience in China, we were there in 2000. 1990. It's so funny to think back to that.
Yeah, because that was right after the Tiananmen.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but on that trip, we were from all over the country with expertise in prevention or pastoral care or research or quarantine prevention, all these things. And it was a great time for us all to talk and compare notes. And there was a person on that trip who had expertise in running a program for dental work for people with AIDS, which you won't remember this probably, but if you were a person living with HIV, with AIDS, and you had a dental problem, good luck, because they weren't going to touch you. And there was one dentist in the country, in Houston, who developed, it was the same protocol of protection and gloves and this and mask and all this. It was very simple, and he developed that, and that was safe, and people with AIDS could be treated. Anyway, there was a person at this conference in China who ran that program, who wrote the grants for it and stuff. And he and I struck up a conversation in Beijing. And eventually, that's Michael Collins is my partner. We met in China. He's from Houston. He left his life, his job and everything. And so we've been together 35 years from that. So that the trip that changed my life certainly did. And Michael's very active in the community too. He was on the board of the library, and he was certainly involved in all the things that we did with the quilt and the gardens and all that. So he then worked for Southampton Hospital, running a program there, continuing to work with people with HIV and certain outreach to those groups. So he just retired a couple of years ago, and so he's looking to do some volunteer work. I mean, you can't do nothing. You just don't want to. I was terrified on my last day, and then David Nice called and said, would I do that? So one reason we're so successful is we all care a great deal about each other on the group. And there's no argument that's worth having. Yes. We can all figure things out. There's no hard feelings or anything. So I also thought each of those people have full-time jobs. The other committee people. And I didn't. I was blank. So it let me really double my effort. And they'd say, oh, we can't do this. I said, oh, okay, I'll do it. So I did a lot more stuff than I would have done normally because we needed to do that. And I'm not sure about this figure, but Polly Dixon, who spoke at my tree dedication, she said that over the 20 years, almost just about 20 years, we planted 1,000 trees. And I thought, wow, and it could be because, each year we do, 35 or 40, and then 20 years, and then sometimes we'd get a grant. The state has helped out with some environmental plantings and stuff.
Yeah. And I was curious about, even if you could talk about the Cherry Blossom Festival.
Oh, sure. Having lived in Greenport for a while now, I've lived 40 years before I came here and 40 years after. It's like the mid place. Letting you know my age, which is amazing to me anyway. But the cherry blossoms always just was out of nowhere. And then I realized it was a very conscious program that Joe Townsend, when he was mayor, I understand he was a mayor. This is something we could check in the local history books here, that he became mayor at age 25, maybe.
I think he was one of the youngest.
Yeah. So,
mayors.
And it was his idea to plant these trees. And they became really an emblem of the village. So his sister, Susan Townsend Johnson, who was active in the different historic groups and stuff.
And she came on here too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, she did?
She came on the
pod. I would like to hear hers.
Yeah.
Anyhow, she came to me one day and she said, John, we're just about to have these cherry blossoms. And people don't have to go to Washington. There comes a day here in late April, early May, that these trees will just blossom out. So I said, you're right. So her kind of motto was, don't go to Washington. You don't have to go to Washington to see the cherry blossoms, see ours. I said, why don't we make a little tour map or something, a self-guided. You could go walking around 3rd Street, 2nd Street. And I said, I'll go, and when the trees are in bloom, and I'll say, okay, this was a pear tree, and this one was a Bartlett, this was Quonset cherry, and so forth. And so I knew where the trees were, and if I didn't, I would wait a little bit till they bloomed, or I'd examine the leaves. And between our group, we said, no, that's Kwanzaa cherry is over there on that 3rd Street. And we placed the trees on a map and made it a self-guided tour. That you could have this map and you could say, okay, I'll start at the library, I'll go down here to North Street, this one. And it became, people picked it up. The group, there's another group called the Agro Council.
Yes.
Okay, so they picked that up and they said, how about if we support this and figure out a way to make it a fundraiser? I said, that's great. So what the idea is to go to the restaurants, and restaurants, I guess, mostly, or the leather store, things, and have them put something aside. So she would go to the restaurants. This is Shirley. Not Shirley, Rivera is her last name. She wrote that really nice letter to me.
Okay.
Anyway, they said to be included on the program, the different restaurants could give $50 or something. So she would then collect that. It's turned into a nice fundraiser. It's maybe $800 or $900. And she would then decide to run a 5K race amongst those trees. So far, every one that I've been to has been rain, awful, terrible.
This past one was raining.
Yes, and this was the worst one.
Uh,
The one before that was also teeming rain. And when we had the tree thing for me, my
Yes.
dedication, I'm surprised it didn't float away. Anyhow, and then we went to, it's near the fire department, so we can use their water source. That's been tough to find water for all these trees we have to do. And you see those bags?
Yes.
They have a watering truck that I actually drove a few times. It looks like a porta potty on top of a dump truck, an old dump truck, and it holds 500 gallons of water. So we go fill that thing up and then go out to the trees, put it in the tree bags. And I didn't mind doing it. I liked doing it, but there are all kinds of insurance liabilities. Who's this old coot going up there to water the trees? Anyhow, it's added some resources, some funds that's become the cherry blossom time, and the newspapers love it. Every year they want new pictures of the cherries. And the 3rd Street Park is especially beautiful because at the entrance the plantings have made an arch, and when they're in bloom, it's the best.
Yeah,
the best.
Yeah, but even with the tree committee, you mentioned even monitoring some of the trees, and I think if we look at some of the older photos, especially even in front of the library here, there was some bigger ones that I think we had to cut down in the 2000s.
Yes, it's true. It was a sad day, really sad day. There were elm trees. I even have a clipping from the South Hold. What was the other newspaper called? Traveler Watchman.
Traveler Watchman, yeah.
And where the bank is, the Chase Bank.
Yes.
Along there were elm trees that were diseased and had to come down. And will we ever get those again? You don't know.
Those were...
We ruled out. We have a list of trees that these are good. The height would be good. They don't heave the sidewalk. There's so many things you have to consider that I just thought, just make it pretty. But no, it interferes with the plumbing. It interferes. And some of the first calls that I got in the tree committee were, this damn tree is going to be the death. We're having to chop out the roots. So we're trying to protect and hide or constrict, rather than let it go everywhere.
But that's no, because it is kind of, it's because you have those nice tall trees, but I feel like the cherry blossom trees tend to be more shorter and stay low to the ground in some ways, and you're not. It's not like you're cutting them like a crepe myrtle where they come back.
That's right. Those are an adaptation. They cut them to push out their
from the top.
Yes. And so that you can walk under it, you can park your car under it, and then you still have the blossoms.
Yeah.
And mainly the cherry trees that we have are Quinlan cherry trees. They're like a double blossom, and they're pink and going into white. And they are the ones that create the pink snow. Like the days after, and there's always a big rainstorm, and there's always the streets are rife with.
And my car was covered in pink.
Oh yes,
I was like, how do I get this off?
That's right. And I have a sunroof in my car, and I always leave it open because I want to get the petals, and then I'm driving through town like that. Yeah, but they need various amounts of work, and some of them, that we're not going to get the same effect.
Yeah,
we just can't because we've taken off whole families of trees, ash trees. There's an beautiful ash tree near Jane Williams' office on Front Street, and it's near the Tapestry house that used to be the convent for the nuns.
Yeah.
And her tree was having a hard time. And then we realized the emerald ash borer, which we kind of followed the progress of it. It was in Amityville. It was in Riverhead. It was, and eventually comes here. We have to remove those trees, even if it's no sign of anything, because it's going to spread further out. And that's a heartbreaker. And sometimes we say, this one isn't really so bad, but you got to do what the boss tells you. I mean, it's kind of like that.
And like any other like invasive species.
Yes, there's the southern pine. There's a southern pine beetle, and we have, up at Orient State Park, and you go long drive.
Yes.
Out to the park. That used to be all black pines.
Okay.
And also the hospital coming. I live across the street from the hospital, so as you come out of the hospital, that thing along by the bay, that whole section, they were black pines. And they, they come in container ships. No one means it to happen, but they just hop aboard for a ride to a new country. So anything else about this?
Or even...
how did I get here?
Yes.
How did I get here? It's kind of interesting, I think. I didn't know Greenport very well. Just those times of jury duty.
Yes, you mentioned the jury duty.
But a friend of mine from the city was coming to Greenport, taking the bus to Greenport, and he was friendly with somebody who had a house on 3rd Street. He said, I'm going to go there and stay overnight, just walk around, see what it's like. So I said, oh, yeah, I'd like to go. So I went with him, and it was 1984. It was the Olympics were on. It was hot as hell. So hot. So we just kind of walked around, didn't have a car, walked around the village, and there was a tree on Center Street that was burning. The crotch of the tree was about 7 feet high, and it was smoking. It was burning. And I said, oh my God, what's going on? So I found a call box somewhere, and immediately the fire department came, and I was embarrassed. I was thinking, this little piddly thing, I could have squirted seltzer on it or something. But anyway, they came out and 3 or 4 motors and engines and stuff. They put it out. I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize it was so minor. I could have found somebody's garden hose. No, you did the right thing. We got to protect our trees.
Yeah.
And so I had an idea that they liked their trees in Greenport. So it was, as I said, it was a weekend. It was summer. It was hot. They were having the chicken barbecue that same night.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this tree on fire, and here was the fire department. And we go to the dinner. And we say, "Oh yeah, you were the one that called in that the fire in the tree." And I said, "Wow, what a community! They all know each other." It seemed really nice. It seemed very welcoming. They didn't seem to have any certain prejudice or anything. They were just these people that are here. So that was that made me feel good about it. And that you could just walk down any block and end up at the water. We are so blessed here. And I'm so happy to spend the second half of my life here. I go to the city, do what I have to do. I go visit my brother in Vermont. And, people have chosen where they want to be. And this is where I want to be. So Michael didn't ever know anything about New York, but learned to love it, learned to really love Greenport. He's very concerned that getting too fancy,
Yes.
Getting too uppity.
Yeah.
But that's just my prejudice too. It's like I'm hard scrabble, I'm salt of the earth.
Yeah.
And I don't need a pool. Is anybody going to fill these pools with anything? Crazy. Yeah. And having searched for water many summers for the trees, I'm not so sure that's such a good use of our water resources. Anyway, we get a really rainy time. And the past few weeks, wow.
Yeah, it's been rainy.
Really? So 2 or 3 days were 5.5 inches of rain.
Yes.
So one thing is they made the cherry blossoms beautiful. The dogwoods, crepe myrtles are going to be beautiful. And it's so exciting because you say, oh, wait, we planted that 2 years ago and now it's going to bloom. And I'm so happy that I could be part of Greenport's rebirth in a way. I mean, each new tree helps. Each taking out of a tree. It was a giant tree. Oh, I have a scrapbook to show you sometime.
Yeah.
But it was a giant tree in 3rd Street Park. Giant, 200, no, not 200 feet, but 150 feet maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
So I always think in terms of how many stories that would be in a building. 15 stories? No, it's not that tall. But I think we're blessed to live here. I'm hopeful things will stay peaceful.
And then also, I want to talk a little bit about you were recently honored with the tree dedication.
Oh, yes. Sure. The tree committee has made presentations in the past to people who really helped out our efforts and stuff. Certain growers, Ann Trimble, who passed away recently, she was one of our first contributors and really helped to the tree growing aspect of things. And we honored different people, including Lillian White passed away after coming back into service with the tree committee for a few years. And she said she was glad that it was now put in my hands because she trusted me. I mean, it took some years, but I felt really good that I earned her trust. That if I said I was going to do that tree or plant that, I would do it. Mayor Nice, we gave him a plaque to say thanks for infusing us with some energy and some money and supporting the tree committee. And Mae Watson is a newcomer to Greenport years ago, and she was a pioneer in cinnamon tree over by what's now American Beach. She took those buildings that were really kind of derelict, fixed them up, put money into it, but that then spread to fix up another place. And all. She did a lot, and she planted trees. So anyway, the committee said, okay, we want to honor somebody okay, John, you're up. And I said, no, it can't be. It just if it's going to be me, it has to be with Jane, because she's worked longer and harder than I. And she said, no. She didn't want to do that. No, I worked the hardest, because while they were all doing their work jobs, I did the tree stuff. So I said, okay, well, we're doing you next year. So I don't know how that's going to fly. It was very nice, and they spoke. And Dave Abatelli was the administrator, and he said, in our time as volunteering for the tree committee, he said we were the most active of all the volunteer groups. He thought we did the best job and all that. So, of course, I like to hear that. And they said, okay, we're going to plant a tree for you. Where do you want it? I said, I thought the 3rd Street Park would be great. What kind of tree would you like? And I said, I think I like ginkgo biloba. And people hear that and they say, oh, those smell. No, that's the female or the seed pods.
Yes.
And in China, it's quite the thing. And that's thought to be a curative. And they would never discriminate, but we would, because it's offensive to us in the park. So it's a male tree, and it's in 3rd Street, kind of near the 4th Avenue entrance. So I understand the plaque is ready. It's not put on there yet.
Oh, okay.
And tomorrow we plant the senior tree for the kids graduating class of 2025.
Wow.
And we have done this ritual for about 40 years. All throughout the school grounds, the kids have been encouraged to do a time capsule and put things in it that remind them of this school experience and this community. And so it's really nice. It's a nice thing. And I've asked the Suffolk Times to come to that and maybe take a picture of my tree too.
Yeah. Because
it's too bad we didn't get any press for that. So because we do good stuff.
Yeah.
That's easy as that. So I've kind of stepped back from being the chair of the tree committee, but I want to still be involved. I said that there's a song from Dreamgirls, and they say, and I am telling you, I'm not going, like that. So,
yeah.
So I would do that.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to leave the tree committee.
No.
So I can really talk a lot, right?
That's good. I think the only other thing I think we touched on it a bit, but just even what your hopes would be for the future of the North Fork and its community down the line.
Oh, the hopes would be, I would say that I hope things stay moderate and on the incline, but not overdo. The stories of these hotels coming with 70 rooms and acres of parking, and I just don't see the need. That's the kind of thing I would vote against if there were voting. And people say, they're stuck with these properties. Well, figure it out. I mean, but we sure don't need that. Yesterday, trying to come from up the island, all these roads were closed because Matitech was preparing for the Strawberry Festival. Mm-hmm. We had to go off of the road this way, and that's just the prequel thing. So that they go in there to hull the strawberries. So, I mean, we have not a lot of roads, not a lot of space. So
you can't really handle more, especially something like that.
And I read once that for the whole Strawberry Festival, when they total everything up, they make $350 in that one particular year anyway. So I thought, that's a lot of effort for $350. You could get one check from one person and let everybody have the night off,
Yeah.
But there's this thing about it. I know tradition and
Yes.
community, and I'll pick you up on Tuesday night. We'll go hull those strawberries, and that's cool. And and it's genuine.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the copy of it, the plastic copy of it. I'm very glad to live here. When you talk about it like this, you realize how lucky we are.
Mm-hmm.
How really lucky we are. So, not to mention the water at the end of every block,
Mm-hmm.
the view, the ferry boat. It's great.
Yes.
I think I'll run for mayor.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
No, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on today and share your story and all the work you've done here, but also throughout your career. Really.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Because you get to be privileged and live this long and try to stay active and try to have a meaningful life. It adds up, and
Mm-hmm.
and I'm in good shape. So.
Yes. Awesome.
Well, I appreciate you doing this,
Yeah.
and you're getting to know the community from the grassroots people. I'm hardly grassroots. I'm grassroots of a time. I
Yes.
have my shelf life too, probably, and I'm trying to make sense out of all the history, and it's just fabulous.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Well, okay, Chris. Good to meet you and talk to you.
All
Salute.
right. Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 147 with John Quinlan. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.